FM Network.
Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl. Here we go.
Muito bem, pessoal, estamos começando mais uma edição do Black Yellow Brasil Podcast, programa 312 desse seu podcast sobre o Pittsburgh Steelers para todo o mundo lusohablante e um programa especial. Hoje a gente está recebendo Dave Bryan do Steelers Depot, que é o maior site, como vocês vão ver no começo do programa, né? O maior site que fala de Steelers em todo o mundo, tá? É gigantesco, a quantidade de conteúdo, a quantidade de rastreamento que eles conseguem fazer é enorme. A gente recebeu mais uma vez, até a terceira vez durante a nossa existência, que a gente recebe Dave Bryan direto do Steelers Depot. Então vão lá acompanhar @Steelers Depot, DEPOT, no Twitter, no Instagram, steelersdepot.com também, tem uma quantidade de conteúdo maravilhosa para vocês. Acompanha também o Black Yellow Brasil, né? @BlackYellowBR no Twitter, no Instagram e no Telegram, essa nossa cobertura aí de Pittsburgh Steelers. Acompanhe este podcast, se encontra não apenas na FM Network, fumblenanet.com.br, mas em Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts e um monte de outros lugares, tá? Normalmente a gente entra em live às terças-feiras, às 8 da noite, e aos domingos, ou assim que encerram os jogos do Steelers. Claro que a gente não teve a live nesse último fim de semana, porque o Steelers estava em bye week, e nesta semana em específico, se você está ouvindo isso na terça-feira, dia 8, ou na quarta, dia 9, a gente mudou da terça para a quarta, porque a gente está em produção de episódios especiais na nossa bye week. Vocês estão acompanhando esse programa que a gente está falando com o Dave Bryan, é o episódio 312. Nessa terça/quarta deve ir ao ar mais um episódio especial, o nosso episódio 300, esse é realmente especial pra gente. E um último aviso é que esse programa vai ser falado todo em inglês. Então, se você não está muito familiarizado com o idioma, se o teu CCAA não está em dia, faz o seguinte, espera só mais um pouquinho, tá? Que nessa terça-feira já deve estar no nosso YouTube, e aí o post desse episódio vai ter as informações para a versão legendada desse programa. Vamos dar essa força aí para quem não tá inteirado no inglês, acompanhar todo esse conteúdo, todo o conhecimento do Dave. Então fica aí com esse papo. Estamos Caio Melo, Ricardo Rezende, Léo Lima e eu nesse programa. Here we go. Alright everyone, we're here once again in a special episode. Steelers had their bye week last Sunday, did not play for week 9 of the NFL, but we're here to make kind of a recap of the season, kind of a look ahead with a great friend, again a guest in this show, Dave Bryan from Steelers Depot. How are you doing, Dave?
Doing fantastic. So great to be on with you guys once again. It's been too long.
For sure. We need to do that more often. We're here. As you know, we have Caio.
Hello, guys. It's always good to have Dave here with us. I'd like to welcome him. And let's have some fun today.
Absolutely.
Mr. Ricardo Rezende. Say hello to our audience.
Hey, Caio. Hey, Leo. Hey, Dave. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us. As Danilo said, hope this will be more often for the next month. We love to talk about Steelers and even more to talk about Steelers with you.
I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Yeah. For the people that don't know, SteelersDepot.com is most likely the biggest independent media outlet talking about Steelers in the world. It's a bit hard to verify that, but we'll go with that word. You are the biggest, guys.
Absolutely.
As Dave says on Twitter, not real media.
yeah, I like having fun with the real media by making sure everybody knows I'm not real media. But look, I think we are the largest. I mean, our traffic even kind of towers a couple of the papers now and things like that. And we've got a great staff. All of you guys obviously know, Alex Kozora pretty much at this point now. Alex runs, day-to-day operations on Steelers Depot. And we've got several full-time guys on the site now. Josh Carney's been with me for a while. Jonathan Heitritter. You probably recognize Joe Clark writing more and more. He's a full-time guy now, and we've built the staff up, several part-timers as well too. And we usually put out, on average, 30 to 40 pieces of content a day, and film breakdowns and news and you name it. So I couldn't have done it without these guys. And, Alex, as you guys know, has played a big part in this thing now. And pretty much, Alex is, runs day-to-day operations on Steelers Depot now.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I was going to ask you about how many articles and pieces a day you post, but 30 to 40 a day is really a lot. I know a team, a staff makes it less hard, but yeah, it's a big number.
Absolutely. We used to do that between like 2 or 3 people, me, Alex, and Matthew Marksey. And Matthew's obviously still with me full time as well too. And they started off with just me initially, and then I brought on Matthew Marksey, and then not too long after that, Alex joined, and for a while it was just the 3 of us, and we were pumping out that kind of 20 to sometimes 40 depending on the season post. And now it's fun to not have to write that much content in a day.
I guess so. We do like 3 to 4 posts a week, and it's really hard. But yeah, enough talking about us. I know people are here to hear us talking about the Steelers, and we're in a 2-6 season. It's hard to follow that. At the same time, we are hoping to see some improvements in some sides. Let's begin in a positive way, Dave. Do you see any positives here? Do you see any good things coming out in Steelers 2022?
Well, I think the most positive thing this week, right, is get TJ Watt back on the field. And boy, have they missed him since week 1. Up until this point, obviously you start off the season with a surprising, with a last-minute win against the Bengals and how that happened. And, everybody was riding pretty high on that. But in that same game, you lose TJ Watt for an extended amount of time to that pectoral injury, and you went through the quarterbacks there with Trubisky there, and they pulled the plug on him halfway through the game against the Jets. You get Kenny Pickett in there, and it's been as expected, right? I mean, you got a young quarterback trying to feel his way in the NFL world, and it's been very inconsistent so far as with Kenny Pickett. You coming off this game against the Eagles, probably technically it was his worst game of all of them. And, I know he's got the interceptions and all, but I think if you put those interceptions into context, you guys have obviously seen all the interceptions and all. There were a few of them that, probably were unlucky on his end. But then, on top of it, as you guys know, and as we said going into the season, for the Steelers to be able to win games in 2022, they were going to have to be able to run the football. They were going to have to be able to play real good defense and keep the score down to 20 or under, and they weren't going to be able to turn the football over. And unfortunately, not a lot of those things have happened in any 1 week. And the defense obviously missed TJ Watt. The sacks are down. The turnovers, they had 5 turnovers in that first game against the Bengals. And at this point of the season, they have 10 takeaways on the season. You're turning the football over on offense, and you're trying to struggle. You can't run the ball at all, and it just is made for a very, very long season. So I think if you were to say, okay, what is a positive at this point of the season, I would just say that you have Kenny Pickett out on the field, and he's starting to go through the learning process now, and hopefully trying to learn from his mistakes. So that would probably be the biggest positive out of all this, is at least you have him on the field now getting meaningful snaps.
No, what's funny, Dave, because I got the same question asked before, and to me, I'm a very reactive guy. Like, I react super quickly to all these kind of situations that are happening in the season, and sometimes it becomes a blur. There comes with a blur for you to try to find something that's positive on the team. And at the end of the day, I'm not gonna lie, I really like what I'm seeing from Chooks and James Daniels. Those 2 guys, they look like they have some chemistry on the right side of the offensive line. Also, Mason Cole looks pretty decent so far. But what's funny? Last time we talked, I guess it was a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, something like that. I asked you. Actually, it was during the 11-0 season, and I remember asking you if that Steelers offense that started 11-0 back then. I think we were still 7-0 with the Steelers. I asked you if that was the best offense that Ben had run since like 2015, somewhere around that, because the offense was rolling up, doing everything well. But now I'm gonna ask the exact opposite question. Is this the worst offense that we've ever seen from the Steelers, like since, I don't know, Mike Tomlin era? Is that the worst offense? I'm guessing the answer is going to be yes, like easy because they don't have Ben Roethlisberger anymore. But do we recall seeing another offense that looked as bad as this one?
Well, you got to remember, I'm probably a lot older than most of you guys. I'm 54, so I had to go through the 80s, and those, there was a couple of bad offenses there during the 80s, and just overall, it's tough in that Matt Canada offense with they're doing a lot of independent route concepts. You're not seeing a lot of switch routes and schemed up where it's, where routes can kind of coincide. Take for example, I don't know if you guys watched the Miami Dolphins game against the Chicago Bears on Sunday. There was that one instance where they ran that bunch set over on that right side, and they had Tyreek Hill run kind of that delay release, and then they had the tight end coming out of that kind of rub off the defensive back, and it really freed up Tyreek Hill off the line to get vertical, and that's part of the scheme, to scheme that stuff open. You don't see a lot of concepts like a Mills concept or like a dagger concepts that kind of go off of each other, that around the, with one in breaking route to the middle of the field on like a dig or something like that. You don't see that kind of stuff in this offense. And this is an offense too with a young quarterback that if you're not able to run the football, and Lord knows how many years now have we said that this team hasn't been able to run the football effectively, and you get yourself in second and long situations, and you have a quarterback that pretty much quarterbacks in general, talk about Ben Roethlisberger last year, not really utilizing the field past 5 yards past the line of scrimmage toward the middle of the field area. A lot of times what you see is this, more of a dink and dunk offense behind a running game, on top of a running game that does not work. And in the few instances that you see them get the man coverage on the outside, well, then they're throwing the deep shots down the numbers on the outside, and a lot of those have been 50-50 balls over the years, and the Steelers are just not connecting on that deep ball. So it really becomes a kind of a hit and miss offense. And then throw on to the fact that, man, this team cannot register explosive plays anymore, and they don't have any running explosive plays this year. They're down as far as their passing explosive plays go. They can't even get good yards after the catch because they're not putting their how many completed slants have you seen this year? Like 3 or 4?
None. I don't call them, none is still none slants called by the team.
Yeah, I think
not big plays or completed passes.
Yeah, I think maybe in total there's like 3 or 5 I think on the season here, and you running a whole lot of comebacks, a whole lot of curls, a lot of things that, okay, if you complete it, you're not getting the yards after the catch on top of it. And for an offense like this with a young quarterback, man, you have got to have the explosive plays. You've got to have the yards after the catch, and they're just not getting it. And for this offense to score, they have to go 14 plays down the field, and they've obviously had a lot of these silly penalties. It's okay to occasionally get a hold or something like that, but man, the ineligible man downfield penalties, the illegal formation penalties, the false starts, the delay of games. I mean, you're just setting up your young quarterback to fail. And I don't know if you saw this stat that I put out on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. And this goes to Kenny Pickett. 78 of Kenny Pickett's 190 dropbacks this season have come with the Steelers trailing by 14 points or more. And 92 of those 190 snaps of them have been trailing by 10 points or more. Well, that's an unfortunate situation to put Kenny Pickett in, because the defense can just play, some cover 3 deep. They're not going to give up the big play, and they can blitz at will, and they can really get after the quarterback in those situations. So you're already putting Kenny Pickett behind the 8 ball in that aspect. So that's a long answer, but in short, this offense, in at least dating back to the 80s, this is the most inept offense Steeler fans have seen in a long time.
And it shows to prove how Ben Roethlisberger was still efficient, because it was under the same regime. Like, I'm not trying to defend that he should go another year or anything like that. I'm just saying that he wasn't as bad as people put him out to be last year. They called him old. They say he couldn't make plays. He had his issues, but he was turning something out of nothing. That somehow advocates for that. And what you said about the percentages, 78% dropbacks while trailing, that also advocates for what Bill Cowher said a couple of weeks ago as well, when he said that Kenny Pickett is sort of being put in a bad situation because the Steelers are not being able to run the ball. It's so much different from when he started Ben Roethlisberger, what he had the Steelers running a pretty efficient run offense. And basically Ben, I don't remember much for that. I was too young back then. But what can I remember? I do remember that they called pass plays on the most convenient schemes as possible for him, especially adding to the fact that as Pickett is right now, he did not start. They did not plan him to start that season. He was the third string quarterback in the roster. So the same goes for Pickett. Pickett was supposed to be a third string or a backup. They were not ready for him. The scheme was not ready for him until he had to go. And it's so much different. Like the chemistry with him and his and the offensive line, you can see that it's just not there. The chemistry with the receivers, you can see that's just not there. And the fact that they did not play together they did not take first team reps during most of the training camp and most of the preseason, it advocates for that.
And kind of playing off that stat that I gave you, that 78 of Kenny Pickett's 190 dropbacks have come with the Steelers trailing 14 points or more. And you brought up Ben Roethlisberger in his rookie season. During Ben Roethlisberger's 2004 rookie season, he dropped back only 19 times during his rookie season when trailing by 14 or more points. And all 19 of those snaps came when he entered the game against the Ravens in that first game that Ben played in. So, back in 2004, they had a running game. They had an offensive line. They had a very good defense. You very rarely saw Ben have to throw the football, 25, 26, 27 times a game. Now you have Kenny throwing it, 40 something, dropping back 50 times a game. And I mean, that's most of those snaps are coming with them trailing big on the scoreboard, and you just set yourself up for bad things to happen when that happens. So it would be nice in the second half of this season for us at least to get to see Kenny Pickett play a lot of his snaps when maybe it's only a one-score game.
Oh yeah, Dave. I guess the offense will be a trend here on this episode. I saw you at Twitter. We heard a lot about this. I guess Mike Tony already said about this mark a few years ago. The defense, most than ever, have to be allowed minus than 20 points per game to win. So when we beat the Buccaneers, when we won the Bengals, the Bengals was 23 points. The Buccaneers was 18 points that we allowed. Against the Dolphins, we allowed 60 points. Against the Patriots, we allowed 70 points. And it's so hard for this offense to score some points, and even more difficult to find identity for this offense. It was something that we talked about in our last episode together here. Looks like a mess, and as Kyle said, Ben Roethlisberger always find a way to make a magician, to make a Houdini move, to save this offense, and we score points, put us in the game. This year we don't have Ben Roethlisberger to make these plays, and the offense don't look like have a leadership. When we lost Pouncey, we lost Ben Roethlisberger in the last years. David DeCastro was a leadership by example. So we have a lot of veterans in this offense. For now, we don't have this role. So what you think this player to make the offense more functional or more we have identity in the offense. He's on the team right now or not?
Well, look, they don't have an identity right now. They just don't. Their identity is trying to play from behind, and that's not an identity at all. They can't. For things to change, and look, they do have at least it looks like an easier schedule here in the second half, but I don't think you're going to see things get drastically better offensively. They've got to figure out a way to run the ball a little bit better, maybe put Jalen Warren on the field a little bit more than they have and try to do that. Some of their best runs have been inside zone runs, and some of their other better runs have been kind of that pin and pull stuff on the outside. But even saying that those are their best runs, compared to other teams, it doesn't even come close to matching what other teams can do. But they have got to, this team is not going to get better on offense until they fix this offensive line, plain and simple. I don't think they have the pieces in there right now with this offensive line moving forward into 2023 to get it done. So I think they got to address this offensive line with some draft capital next year. And, you just got to hope that what you have there at the wide receiving course. Look, we don't even know who Calvin Austin III is yet. We didn't even get to see him in the preseason, and now he's out for the year, had foot surgery and all like that. So I think, and what their identity needs to be in 2023, while Kenny Pickett is still growing, is they've got to be able to run the football, and then they have got to stay ahead of the chains and get in more third and manageable situations, and they've got to figure out a way to push the football down the field. Because if any offense in the NFL has to have explosive plays, at least 5 or 6 a game, and they're just not getting that until they figure that out. And I'm pretty convinced that this is going to be it for Matt Canada after this year. It's hard to imagine them bringing back Matt Canada after this year. So they need to bring in a veteran, someone with NFL offensive play calling experience, someone that's been around a little while, somebody that's quarterback friendly, and then they need to address the offensive line either in free agency or in the draft, and make a run at it that way, because this offense is just not going to magically get better over the final 9 games of the season without just the way it is. Now they might win some games because they're not playing the quality competition, but it's just hard to imagine this offense turning around 360 degrees from what we saw in these first 8 games.
I love that you start talking about the trench a little bit. I'm a big defender here in our podcast. I believe that every good team starts in the trench, even in the offense or the defense. We had one of the best trenches all time when Big Ben started, and then after with Munchak as O-line coach. Do you think that can fix not the player but the coaching staff, even in the defense also? We have a bad secondary right now, but because our trench is really really bad, our DL can't stop the run and can make press. So with the J-Watch that maybe change, but I'm not certain that will be a great defense again. One player makes a lot of difference, but maybe the staff is the biggest problem right here. Is our big issue? I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think it goes beyond coaching. I mean, I think coaching can definitely make a difference, but let's face it. Look back at some of those better offensive lines that the Steelers have had over the years. They had pedigree guys on it. They had first round picks in Pouncey, DeCastro. Back when Marcus Gilbert was playing, what was he? A second round pick. Ramon Foster was one of those ones where they hit, and occasionally you'll hit with an undrafted free agent. And then for a little bit of time, they hit with another undrafted free agent in Alejandro Villanueva. But Alejandro Villanueva was never, really a Pro Bowl type tackle, and he really wasn't as good against the run. He was better as a pass protector, more so than he was at a run. But the core of that, look at the core of that, and that was your 2 guards and your center in Foster and in Pouncey and in David DeCastro. Those were pedigree guys overall. Obviously, Foster was an undrafted free agent, but when you look at Pouncey and DeCastro, those guys were first-round draft picks. Pedigree can overcome, the coaching aspect of it. So I don't think with these 5 that they have right now on this offensive line, I don't think merely changing the offensive line coach is going to get it done. I just don't. I think that you have to dedicate some draft capital to this, and you have to get some of those high-quality offensive linemen in the draft in order to fix this. And I think it's that simple. I don't think you can put it all on coaching, because it's not like there's so many different techniques out there at this point in the NFL. It's pretty, they all run inside zone, they all run outside zone, and a lot of them coached up. Sure, better in some aspects with the footwork and hand placement. I mean, let's face it, this offensive line for the Steelers looks a lot better than what I thought it would look this year. All right. You guys have been watching the tape, I'm sure. I mean, going into the season this year, I thought this offensive line was going to be an absolute mess. Now, they're still not great run blocking, but I think they're a little bit better, in that area than I thought they would be. But I think the only way that they solve this thing is to get higher pedigree players on that offensive line. And there's only two ways you do that, through the draft or through free agency. And we know the Steelers aren't huge players in free agency. So that tells you that they're going to have to do this during the draft.
One of the drums we've been banging through the latest weeks. We were approaching the NFL trade deadline, and we thought the Steelers should be sellers. It's not an NFL-wide concept now. They're starting to get that when you're having a bad season, there are some players you judge expendable, you can trade away, accumulate draft capital for the next year. And the Steelers ended up just trading away Chase Claypool for a second-round pick from Chicago. They brought in William Jackson III in a late-round swap picks. Do you think the Steelers should have sold more players in this trade deadline?
Well, who were you going to sell in these situations? Really, there was probably three players that you could make probably, I think, a strong argument for. Chase Claypool was obviously one of them. Could they have gotten, I don't know, a 5th or a 6th round draft pick from Mason Rudolph? Obviously, sure. Maybe they could have. I don't know, but they didn't deal him. And some people say, what could you have got from Mitch Trubisky? Well, I think it all becomes what the need is out there. And there weren't a lot of teams that are kind of heading towards the playoffs that had that kind of need overall. So on the flip side, I don't think you just give those players away because, look, Mason Rudolph, he's gone after this year. But what if he signs a contract, I don't know, $5-6 million? That'll help you out a little bit better maybe in the compensatory formula for 2024. Now, it's not instant. You don't get that 2023 draft pick there, but maybe he helps add a little bit to the compensatory formula overall. I mean, they weren't going to trade Cam Hayward. I mean, and I know some people try to bring that up. There's no way they were going to trade Cam Hayward. I think some other people were thinking trade Larry Ogunjobi. I suppose that's possible if they really wanted to. But I'll tell you this, I really think the Steelers right ahead of the trade deadline, I think that they still think that they can make some sort of run at this somehow, some way. I don't think they're in the tank mode. I think that they really thought that they could potentially make a run at this thing still. And look, Chase Claypool, with George Pickens coming on, and with Claypool not being great in the slot, and with Claypool, you weren't going to extend Claypool's contract next offseason. If you got the right price for him, look, I would have given Chase Claypool away for a 4th round draft pick. So I was shocked that they got a 2nd round draft pick for him in that. But I just don't see. Everybody says they should have maybe sold more. Who were you going to sell? Yeah,
we were thinking and talking about like any player you brought in for a 1-year contract or the kind of 1-year contract, the one that has little to no guarantees next year. Basically, all those defensive guys are brought in. They were brought in as a trial, right? You bring a player with a 2-year, $8 million contract. You're basically telling, okay, paying you the first year. If you prove yourself, we have a new contract. We'll pay you next year. If you don't prove yourself, we cut you with little to no that money. But the sweet spot I was looking for.
But here's the thing, though. Who was going to give you anything for a Levi Wallace or an Akella Witherspoon? Because both those guys signed 2-year, $8 million contracts. Those guys weren't going to bring you anything on the trade market whatsoever. I mentioned Larry Ogunjobi, but Larry Ogunjobi's not under contract past this year, so somebody would have been trying to rent him for the rest of this year. And then, okay, maybe people say Miles Jack, but man, Miles Jack, I mean, you're going to need Miles Jack next year in this defense. So I don't think it would have been wise to sell him off. So I don't think they had really anything that other teams wanted other than Chase Claypool.
Which is a really bold statement, right? It's like your roster is not deep enough, not good enough. You can't sell because you don't have good players, basically.
Yeah. Look, I mean, and look, they haven't had a backup edge outside linebacker. I've been screaming that for the last couple of years, and they went out and got Malik Reed, and I think you guys agree that that's not much of an ad there, and they found that out, unfortunately, when TJ Watt went down there. But yeah, look, this team's got to do what does this team got to do a better job of moving forward? They've got to do a better job drafting. They're drafting the way they have drafted these last couple of years is a pretty good reason why they are where they're at right now.
Luckily, we have like one of the best edges classes in like the last 10 years in the next draft, so maybe we can get one there.
Yeah, how would that kid from Alabama look?
We've been dreaming. We've been dreaming with the possibility of Will Anderson being drafted.
Yeah. Look, you guys have probably listened to me, a long time. I love edge rushers. I love guards, physical guards and centers, and I love tight ends. Bill Parcells always used to say in a draft, if you pick, first round draft picks, especially if you pick early in the first round, Bill Parcells said you either get a quarterback, you get a player that can protect the quarterback, meaning a tackle, or you get a guy that can get after the quarterback, meaning an edge rusher there. And I firmly believe that. I still have problems with this team drafting a running back in the first round a couple of years ago. And I don't dislike Najee Harris. I think Najee's a fine guy. I think he did some nice things during his rookie season. But to spend a first round draft pick on a running back on a fungible position such as that, especially when you don't have an offensive line to go along with it, to me, it didn't make a lot of sense. And now here we are in Najee's second year, and his numbers are worse than they were his rookie season. He's beat up a little bit with that foot injury early in the season, and he's getting older by the day. It's not like he came out a young player. He came out of college with a pretty good workload underneath him as well too. So this team has, and hopefully with them bringing in Andy Weidel over from Philadelphia, hopefully this team can get back to making some better decisions on draft day, because that's the only way, unless this team decides to spend some money in free agency, that's really their only way out of this hole right now.
All right. You know what? I've been thinking, Dave, that the Steelers defense has very little accountability on their side of the ball. Is not very little. I'm overestimating that, but they're not having as much accountability called to them as they should have, because this is supposed to be a top 3 defense in the NFL. And aside from the fact that they lost TJ Watt, they lost the Defensive Player of the Year 2021, that's big. I'm not gonna underestimate that. But the fact that they're almost bottom tier, bottom stats to almost every defensive stats in the league right now, just on the loss of one key player. That is really underwhelming. And also, do you think that maybe Terrell Austin could possibly be in a hot seat because of that? Like, I'm not saying he's gonna get fired, but I think he's getting a lot more pressure than what it is being called out on the media. Internally, things are definitely not fine with this defense, and the performance has been just really underwhelming. Not even close to being below average. It's just below average, very bad all around. And they made too many investments on this defense. They kept Alualo around. They brought in Larry O. They re-signed Chris Wormley. They went out there, got Malik Reed. They went out there, got Miles Jack. They re-signed basically everyone that they could this offseason. And it just looks bad. It looks like those moves, they look like those type of Cleveland Brown moves that they used to make 5-6 years ago, that they would go out there on a spending spree on the free agency, sign a bunch of players and not getting anything from them. And then you see them go out there to another team and have a decent success. Like Jamie Collins would be an example. Of course, he's a guy that only performed in the Patriots, but you can usually see those kind of situations happening in this defense. And I don't know, it's just being very mediocre. And as a Steelers fan, this sort of performance is just unacceptable on my from my point of view. It's just outrageous to see this team spend so much money on the defense, and the defense just being outperformed every single game against any kind of offense. An offense that's struggling, an offense that's obviously doing great. They just struggle against everyone. And when they had Butler, we usually could see this very few matchups that they would just get very ready to face them, and they would just go out there and perform very well against those teams. But we don't see that happening anymore, especially this season. Maybe Terry Austin is to blame, maybe Mike Tomlin is to blame, I don't know. But I think maybe. Do you think that Terry Austin could be getting much more pressure than what's being perceived as?
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. Even when Keith Butler was here, this is Mike. Let's not kid ourselves. This is Mike Tomlin's defense, and Terrell Austin is just a defensive coordinator by name alone. Here, what's happening on? I don't think he'll be on the hot seat, Terrell Austin, and I don't think he should be on the hot seat. I think. Look, when you lose the Defensive Player of the Year, and yeah, it is a shame that you lose one player like that, and your whole defense. But this defense has always been predicated for since Tomlin has been here, and really before that, on pressure. If you have the pressure, Russian coverage goes hand in hand, and they're not getting consistent pressure on they have not still been great against the run, and that goes back to last year. And obviously they had a lot of injuries up front last year, but they have not been getting it done up front. And then when you lose a guy like TJ Watt, you don't have that consistent pass rush, and then that causes the back end guys, your guys like Akella Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, James P. You're leaving those guys up to get exposed. Now, within that though, how many interceptions did they have a chance to have against the Miami Dolphins? 4?
We count 6.
Okay, 6, 4. Yeah, you gonna put that on Terrell Austin? Sooner or later, your players have got to make plays, right? Because that's what you're paying them to do. If you get 1, even 2 interceptions in that game against the Dolphins, that's probably a different game, right? And how many times this year, have we, even against the Eagles, even though it probably wouldn't have mattered in the grand scheme of things, Cameron Sutton had one go off his hands in that game there. So here's their biggest fault overall on the defensive side of football is they did not have a good enough plan on the edge. They didn't have enough depth there at the edge position if they lost a player like Highsmith or TJ Watt for a number of games there. Malik Reed and Jameer Jones, that's not it. That's not going to do it. As far as the back end goes, I don't know how many people went into this season thinking, Keller Witherspoon's going to be the answer, because he just had not shown enough up until that point. And now that he has played more on the outside, I think you see what you see is what you get with a guy like him. And I think the problems on the defense are multi-layered. And look, Devin Bush is going to be, look at all the whole, and here's another thing, DeMonte Casey, he was having such a great preseason that the Steelers were probably going to plan to use a little bit more of these 3 safety packages. And then you lose a guy like him, during the preseason, and hopefully they're going to get him back this week along with TJ Watt there. So there's a lot of different layers involved in this defense. And once again, make no mistake about it, this is Mike Tomlin's defense. And I think the buck starts and stops with him. So no, personally, I don't think Terrell Austin, I don't think his job's going to be in jeopardy this next offseason. What they need to do is they need to address, that via the defensive line and outside linebacker and cornerback. They need to address that during either the draft or free agency here. This is not going to be a quick fix with this team right now. If you look at the free agents that this team has after this season, and a lot of these guys that are going to be gone, you're probably just going to say, hey, that's fine. Go ahead and go. But you don't fix that all in one draft, and you don't fix that all in free, in other words, there are a lot of holes on both sides of the football that this team has. And that's now got me thinking that this Super Bowl window might not open back up again until 2024, to be quite honest with you, because there's that many holes on that side, on both sides of the football, and I just don't see the Steelers being able to fix all of them in one off season.
So you're talking about the coaching staff, and we know that Matt Canada, as we already talked today, is really, really, really on the hot seat, and I'm pretty shocked that we don't fire him at this bye week. If I would bet that the Steelers would fire him after the game against the Eagles, I would put my money on that. And yeah, he's still here, and now we know that he will still here until the end of this season. And we know the historic of Matt Canada in college football is a really traditional name in the NCAA and have a lot of experience. I don't know if we can call him a great offense mind or a creative mind when we see the work that Matt Canada has, his resume on the college football, and this transition to NFL to him is too difficult as we see this year. But you're talking about a point, and in the last episode of the Terrible Podcast, Alex was talking about this, that the play calling is a feel better, to be fair with Alex. Don't say he doesn't say that it's a great offense or a great offense play calling, but it's better when we see some old games on this season, on the beginning of this season. And I was thinking about Dave. The problem in this offense is the execution or the play calling, or if you're gonna say it's a 50% play calling, 50% execution, 70% play calling, 30% execution. What is your thoughts about this?
Yeah, look, I think it's all of it, and it's all of it at the wrong time, too, right? I mean, it starts, too, with, and it goes back to running the football. They can't run the football. And if you can't run the football with a young quarterback, you're just setting yourself up for disaster, and then you get by halftime, and you're 10 points down, and then, a lot of your stuff goes out the window. Some of the best play calling or best execution that we've seen so far, especially with Kenny Pickett at quarterback, has been early in games. Right? Around the 15, 18 play script, the opening script. You get that out of the way, and we've seen them be able to go down the field and have some drives here. What happens after that script, though? You don't see them. Did you see what the Eagles did to the Steelers a couple of weeks ago with kind of lull them to sleep with the wide receiver screens? And then, they get the defense biting up on a fake, on a screen, and Terrell Edmonds thinks he's going to sniff that out. And what do? They release the pass. Pascal goes right past him, wide open on a busted coverage. How many times do you see the Steelers use a setup? Because look, if you watch the All-22 like we do, and especially when you watch not only the Steelers but the way other teams do it, you'll see different plays in like the 15 or 18 play script that ends up being a setup for something later on in the game. Well, you don't see a lot of that stuff going on the Steelers side. Now, once again, you get behind 10 or 14 points a game, defenses aren't going to play man as much. They're going to play a lot of zone, and that's what the Steelers have mostly faced this year, is a lot of zone anyway. And the few times that they do get some man coverage, Kenny has tried to go down the field, and he's not connecting. Look, this team is right in the top three, or at least they were last week, of taking shots down the field of 20 or more air yards. I know it doesn't feel like it. You're probably thinking, oh, Dave, you've lost all your marbles here. But I guarantee you that they were at the top of the league in taking deep shots down the field. The problem was they're not connecting on them. And when you don't connect on those, and that's a big point, and your offense relies on that being the only way that you're going to get explosive plays, well, and you can't run the football, or you have to abandon the run because you get down, it all goes sideways real quick. But I think if Matt Canada has, some of Matt Canada's faults is that he does not build off of what he already has out there in games. He'll come out there with a game plan. You'll see a lot of the, obviously the jet sweeps. You'll see, inside zone. You'll see the pin and pull. You'll see, a couple of zone beaters and all like that. But you don't have him building off of what he lays down early in the game, whereas you see other teams like the Eagles. Look, the Eagles' offense is not that complicated, right? It's just an RPO.
it's pretty, the Eagles. I was watching, I guess was Manuel Acho, I guess, was make a read about the touchdown of Zach Pascal against the Eagles and said that the Eagles called that play more early on the game. So
exactly,
it's pretty simple, and I think the Eagles the perfect benchmark to the Steelers follow the step for next year's maybe.
Now here's the thing, Jalen Hurts. We all agree Jalen Hurts is a perfect fit in that offense, right? Because of his mobility. Kenny Pickett's not that mobile. I mean, how many times a game are you going to see maybe Kenny Pickett keep it on a read option or something like that? Now, can they work around that? Can they go a little bit heavier RPO maybe? Yeah, I think that's a start there. But remember that RPO stands for what? Run pass option. And the good thing about the Eagles is when they run on that run pass option, they're getting 5 or 6 yards. When the Steelers run RPO, they get 2 yards.
When there's not an eligible man down the field.
Yeah, and you know, here's a bright spot is hopefully by the end of the season, Kenny Pickett will have seen a lot of different defenses at that point, and we'll get a little bit better reading some kind of stuff. And you know, we'll see if I think they should be running a little bit more RPOs than they do now. But once again, you get behind on the scoreboard and you're chasing from behind, it makes it kind of hard to stay that kind of discipline. And as you've seen now to this point, teams are just coming out. They're playing zone. They're daring the Steelers they're either playing 2 high zone or cover 3 deep zone. And maybe in some third down situations, they're playing press man. And that's when the Steelers are trying to take their shots and they're not hitting them there. But it goes back to with the Eagles, man. The Eagles execution, you said, you know, is it 50% coaching? Is it 50% execution? You know, they can execute that RPO, man. The Eagles are really that there's so many ways they can cut you up with that RPO. I mean, look at Ertz, look at obviously AJ Brown, the other young receiver that they have over there, and their offensive line. They have pedigree on that offensive line, so it goes back to what we just talked about earlier in this interview. You know, they have an offensive line because they have high pedigree guys in that offensive line, and they have built an offense that matches the skill set of Jalen Hurts perfectly. What the Steelers need to figure out is what is Kenny Pickett's best skill set, and then build around that. And I think they're still trying to find that right now.
Let's talk a little bit about something good right now. we talk a lot. I guess it's gonna be good. So, George Pickens, we have a guy like can make plays. He will receive more the ball now that Chase Claypool is gone. Do you believe that he maybe can be the offensive rookie of the year? And another one, how many sacks did TJ Watt will record in the last 9 games? He will be double digits.
All right, let's start with George Pickens. A lot of people need to remember when George Pickens came out, he didn't play a lot in his last season because of the injury. And on top of it, one thing that we knew George Pickens could do is we knew, you know, he has good body control, good hand, and he could separate and all. What it's going to take a little time with George Pickens to do is become a full-fledged good route runner. He didn't, you know, you look at his total amount of snaps that he played at Georgia, it's probably the equivalent to one NFL season that he played at Georgia. So that's part of his maturation process. I think he will become a better route runner, and I think they've got a fine prospect. Look, I mean, some of the catches this kid's already made is just absolutely phenomenal. But what they got to start doing is they got to start increasing his route tree, right? Because look at most of his, and I'm looking at his targets right now for 2022. 12 of them have been curls, 8 of them have been out routes, 5 of them have been goes, 5 of them have been fade back shoulder throws, 3 comebacks. Notice I haven't even hit slants yet. You know, so the way they're using him in this offense primarily is they're using him outside, way outside the hash marks, closer to the numbers, and all they're doing is running curls, outs, and goes with him. They got to increase it in the second half of the season. Now that Chase Claypool is gone, they've got to get his route tree. They got to build that up. So we got to see more routes, more digs from him, more routes, more slants, more routes going to the middle of the field. field. Do I think he can do enough in the second half to win Offensive Player of the Year or Rookie Offensive Player of the Year? No, I don't. I just don't think this offense is conducive enough right now. Now, do I think he can have another, 30 catches or so? Yeah, I think he can. Do I think he's going to make a couple of nice catches along the way? Yeah, I do. But I think it's a little bit much to at this point to think that he can win Rookie Offensive Player of the Year. Your other question about T.J. Watt, man, if T.J. Watt is over that pectoral injury at this point, and he got that knee fixed and all as well too, man, we've seen T.J. Watt get 3-4 sacks in a game, right? I mean, I think
times.
I think, let's see, there's 9 games left. Man, I think TJ might be able to get 12 sacks, maybe 10 to 12 sacks. I don't think that's out of the question whatsoever there where it comes to TJ Watt.
Yeah, about Dickens, let's just pray that he don't get a lot of jet sweep, Please, Matt Canada, don't use him as the jet sweep.
No more jet sweeps. We need reverses and wide receiver screens now.
Yeah. Look, I tell you what's going to be fun to watch. Hey, look, you want something to kind of, and I know it's depressing right now, and it's hard to talk about things to look forward to in the second half of the season here. But I want you guys to watch for this. Kenny Pickett was not great in the red zone so far, okay? We want to see Kenny Pickett do a better job in the red zone here. So that's one thing to look for. We want to see Kenny Pickett be able to push the football down the field a little bit more. We want to see his completed air yard average get, around 5 or 6 at a minimum if possible. So that's something else to look for. Steven Sims in the slot. They barely have played Steven Sims, and he's been, he was with the Steelers on the practice squad early last year, and he got promoted for one game. Even up until this past week, he hadn't been targeted much of anything. But if you go back and you look at Steven Sims' tape when he was with Washington, he has some nice snaps there out of the slot, with Washington. So that's something maybe to look for in the second half is maybe, Steven Sims helps you enough in that slot where you can maybe flip-flop and, make George Pickens occasionally play the X, occasionally George Pickens over on the Z. But I think overall, you should see George Pickens get more targets. I think you'll see Pat Freiermuth get a few more targets in this. But I think the things that we're looking for, if you want something to be optimistic about, going into the second half of the season, is let's see Kenny Pickett play better. Let's see Kenny Pickett have better pocket presence. Let's see him be able to push the football down the field. And when they do get in the red zone, let's see Kenny Pickett put 7 on the board instead of 3.
And the last point we were going to finish this podcast was exactly the one you made this in the end. Like, what should we expect for the second half of the season? And it was like this, so I'll make an even harder question about what kind of record are we looking at?
Yeah, look, if DeMonte Casey comes back healthy, and if T.J. Watt comes back healthy, and we'll see what happens with William Jackson III. We'll see what kind of player they have in him. My overall thought is that we'll see some closer games. Now, whether or not the Steelers win them, that's another question. But I think that we might see them at least maybe be able to hold down the opposition to that. I forget who, if it was Kaio or which one of you said it, the 20 to 19 point range, 18 points there. I think because of who they play, because look, you got Atlanta, you got Carolina, you got the Saints, you got a lot of teams that aren't great. So I think you'll see the Steelers have closer games. Now, this morning on the podcast, Alex and I went through the rest of the schedule trying to predict what the Steelers record would be. I think they might be able to get 5 or 6 more wins. And I think Alex said the same thing. I think Alex had them 1 less win than I did. But if they can keep some games close and not, get down, 14 points in games, 17 points in games, I think they might be able to pull a few of these out. Now, they're not going to the playoffs. I think you guys already know that now. But I do like their chances of winning maybe 5 or 6 of these games.
Yeah, let's just remember the only team in a 2-6 to go back to the playoffs was the Washington, I guess they were called the football team back then, the 2020 season, but they won the division. So I guess we're not counting on that one. And Definitely not.
Yeah. Look, like I said, the main thing that I want to see during the second half of this season is I want to see Kenny Pickett make some progress. I want to see less volatility in Kenny Pickett's game. If you can come out of this season feeling a lot better about Kenny Pickett, then I think you're in a much better place, obviously.
Yes, when he becomes the one you don't need to defend from the other fans or analysts or this kind of people, then you're in a sweet spot, right?
Yeah, look, and once again, and I'm not defending him as much as I'm saying, look at how many snaps he's had to play when behind, so many points like that. It's hard enough on a rookie quarterback as it is. Did you guys watch the Titans-Chiefs game Sunday night?
Yep.
I mean, Kenny Pickett looks light years ahead of Malik Willis right now.
Light years. For
we are talking about a guy
who wanted Malik over Kenny. I mean, I was one of them. I was one of the guys that was super hyped. I guess Leo was also super hyped with me for Malik Willis to be drafted in the first round by the Steelers. Man, we're so over that. We're so far from that because he's miles ahead of Malik. But Malik has so much progress to make.
Yeah, now look, and I'll take Malik's side here as well too. Kenny was supposed to be the most NFL ready quarterback too, right? Yes, and Malik is more of a developmental guy. But I tell you, it didn't look like the Titans had a lot of faith in Malik to do anything in that game, and they looked like the game plan looked like they just didn't want Malik Willis to make a mistake in that game, and they thought they could win that way. So Malik has got a long way to go. He's got a lot of good tools, but we haven't really seen any of that at the NFL level just yet. I mean, you're not going to win many games completing just 5 passes in a game. Now, albeit they don't have great wide receivers over there, but I don't think the Titans are doing a good job of scheming things up on offense for the young quarterback either. I suspect when Tannehill gets healthy, he'll come back and finish the season out for them that way there. But I tell you, if you did watch that game, though, you have to think, man, the Steelers are at least right now in a better place with Kenny Pickett at this moment, and we'll see how that plays out in the next couple of years here.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's it. That's gonna be it for this episode, Dave. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And please tell the kind listeners of Black Yellow Brazil to find you in Steelers Depot, you and your great team.
Hey, I appreciate you guys always giving me shout outs on Twitter and all like that. And that means a lot. And I appreciate having me on. I know you'll probably have Alex on. You have Alex on quite a bit, and we appreciate that as well, too. So anytime you need me to come on, just holler at me and I'll come on with you guys. Appreciate you.
Yeah, sure. Even because, podcast guests are kind of fungible, Dave, you would say.
Yes. I am kind of fungible, I guess.
And that's it for this episode, guys. Please keep following us and go check the amazing content on SteelersDepot.com. We'll see you next episode. We have a series of special podcasts planned for you. Please keep following us. Goodbye.